Hello, Mr. Dewey. This is me and Connor speaking, Josh being me. And our presentation is There is a God, and we're talking about chapters 6 and 7 and the sciences behind his arguments, and for example, the multiverse theory and what argument he proposes against the multiverse theory.
So, chapter 6 was all about, did the universe know that we were coming? And so, in this chapter, he discusses two theories. He discusses fine-tuning, and he discusses multiverse theory. So, he contends that the universe is finely tuned, and he proposes that by virtue of the fundamental constants being the way they are, being specific values and very precise values, that if they were to change, then, our universe could be dramatically affected and life would probably not exist as we know it. That is, it would make the universe inhospitable. So in response to this, a common theory is that there is a multiverse, or that our universe is one of infinitely many, that there are many universes, and these universes have variations upon ours. They just occurred in different ways. Specifically, this allows for someone to disregard the supposed chance that occurs, because given an infinite amount of universes, it is only likely that a universe like ours exists. Multiverse theory also contends that these universes can have different laws of nature.
There's also theories about the multiverse theory that it's not just like other universes, but it's alternate universes of our universe, so it could be alternate occasions within the present time that occurred differently and how our lives would have been different, and just different instances, or maybe like a different species altogether, or just different occurrences that are possible within the universe, and just presents a certain possibility that our universe happened, and it's not very a chance because there's infinitely many.
So some pros and cons regarding this theory. It's hypothetically possible, and it can't be disproven, so, it's a nice, tidy way of sort of just responding to a lot of the objections. However, a common criticism of this theory is that it really doesn't explain much. It explains everything, yet nothing, as Flew put it. It's compared to being a blunderbuss, it's a very expansive theory. It sort of just falls short of any grounding in reality. We don't have any reason to believe that the multiverse theory is true, whereas, we have reason to believe that there are simpler explanations, i.e., a finely tuned universe can be credited to a divine creator.
Also doesn't explain how the universes were created in general. It just states that they were there and that there's many of them and that there's different ways these universes could have happened, and it's not very specific, and it also doesn't explain like the origin of our realm of reality in itself, so it doesn't explain how our world, so it's just not very specific, but it is good in the sense that it's kind of presenting a possibility that could be true hypothetically, because it cannot be disproven, so it's a properly basic belief, if you want to say. There could be defeaters, but there's not really many that can hardcore prove that this theory is false.
It's similar to people who contend, we're living in a simulation, and just as with that theory, we can't really disprove it, because, any possible disproof might be implanted there by the people who designed the, experiment. But you have to think about, the logical possibility of it. Does it make sense? You have to kind of rely on whatever intuition you might have. Disprove something like that, because otherwise you could be derailed into just pure skepticism, and that gets us nowhere.
So, Chapter 7 was about how did life go live. I don't know what that means, and why it's worded like that, but it's basically about how beings are teleological at base, and every being has a purpose, and how essentially it kind of just presents the argument that it's very difficult for even evolution itself to create something out of nothing. For example, having a non-teleological being with being materialism and evolving to a point where we do have this certain type of teleological being with a purpose. So basically what a teleological being is just having a purpose and an end goal, and the way they function kind of functions towards how that end goal will result, and kind of like how humans have a worldview, how our decisions are impacted by our goals and different views.
It's a bit similar to the concept of chronology ex nihilo, that the universe is formed from nothing. This is sort of the opposite theory to teleological life. It's like, oh, well, the universe just sort of came to be. Like, there's no reason for it. It came out of chaos, out of nothing. Everything is chaos and meaningless. It's a form of nihilism. And to sort of accept these contentions, you really have to deny intelligent design, and you really need to have, as I was kind of hinting at earlier, intense skepticism. You need to be, skeptical of anything that we can derive with human knowledge, because, if you're a skeptic, you deny sense perception, you deny a whole host of things that allow us to reason and talk about the world around us. And in so denying these things, you just lose all intelligibility regarding, philosophy, really. We're almost forced to the conclusion that there is an intelligent designer. Because in order for a universe of order to come about, you need to have order from the beginning. For order cannot be derived from chaos. There is no way that something like DNA could just start making sense. It was either always chaotic or always ordered. And in order for it to always be ordered, it requires a self-existent being outside of our own universe, and an infinitely intelligent mind, which we call the Creator.
I wanted to expand on his conclusion. So what he draws from an infinitely intelligent being is that he basically states that since beings are teleological, that is not a materialistic type of attribute, and through his evidences, he proposes how he believes that argument is true. And he basically comes to the conclusion that since every being is teleological, that every state of being is, in a sense, created through the mind. Let's say, like a human expansion, how we create different types of inventions that's created through a goal within our mind that we set, and we kind of work upon that and use our senses and our knowledge to build upon that goal and come to the conclusion of making it reality. And basically he kind of goes into this regression saying that if everything was made up of the mind and there had to be a beginning, obviously, then the only real explanation is for an infinitely intelligent, non-materialistic being had to exist and create out of his mind to expand a world that does the same type of function. And that could also go through, scripture and saying that, we are created through God's image, and that can be interpreted in different ways. And I do think that this could be a valid argument, and saying that, since we are created through his image, we tend to function similar to how God does.
Just in summary, multiverse theory, while it does seem to explain a lot of things, it doesn't really provide any good explanations. There's nothing that it is worthy for on its own, right? All the answers it provides are just merely alternatives to intelligent design. These questions are answered by intelligent design. Yet intelligent design seems to be less drastic of an assumption than that of the multiverse theory. The multiverse theory is, a bit large, a bit nebulous. It just, has a lot of, moving parts, It requires clarification of the specifics of each individual universe and what the universe can and cannot be. It requires a lot of, nuance, whereas in comparison, the idea of an intelligent designer is quite elegant in that, it makes sense. Nothing cannot create something, so something has to create something. The universe is something, therefore it's created by something. It's, of course, not an infallible argument, but it seems a more logical conclusion than to accept the conclusions of the multiverse theory.
I think it's interesting because multiverse theory, it's very appealing because there's almost no wrong answer, because there's infinitely many possibilities for things to happen, and that kind of appeals to people because there's no wrong answer. And but it's often disregarded because it's just purely appeals to the hypothetical and skeptical and does not explain our reality as it is and what we live in, and that's what most people try to focus on instead of thinking of, what if, kind of. That's what people tend to put this theory in the realm of what ifs and just purely skeptical and hypothetical. And I don't know. It was just me, but I was thinking it kind of reminded me of what Plantinga said of how God had free will and how that he had an infinite amount of choices to create the world, but he chose one. And I don't know. I guess it could tie into that because I don't know. We never know. God could have chosen a lot of different universes to exist simultaneously. Like he could have, and like he could have chosen to like when Plantinga said that he had all these choices between different worlds and situations in ours, but he only chose one, so he might have put humans on one certain but he has existed and through our history have evolved, and maybe there's aliens on another type of universe or something. So it's not a very sound argument in explaining reality, but it is a properly basic belief if you want to put it out there like that. Mm-hmm.
As time comes to a close, thanks for watching.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Connor and Josh Radio.
Connor and Josh Radio, yes. And then next week for nothing.
W105 point. We'll never do this again.
All right. Clap. I love the power of editing. Like, this is never going to be in the final cut.
Hello, Mr. Dewey.
Teacher, if you please release the JV girls basketball team at this time.
That is definitely going in the video.
I may or may not make an outfit, yeah? That'd be so cringy. Anyway.
The only real explanation is for an infinite, intelligent mind being. Sounds weird. This... Maybe he could have just put humans on one different.
Maybe he could put some.
Maybe he.
With Ethan Jung, Laura Hamilton, Paige Kelly, Caitlin Hume, and Nathaniel Kesting, please come to the office.
And maybe that was.
I knew you should have that argument.